Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this. Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar on e-invoicing. Can you hear me clearly? If you can hear me clearly, just say yes, type it in the chat. Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, so let's get started. Thank you all for joining. As you're all aware, e-invoicing is mandatory for taxpayers with annual aggregate turnover more than 20 crores. This has been applicable since the 1st of April, and lots of taxpayers have been generating e-invoices. And so this session is for people who are still using, who have not generated e-invoices or using the government's utility, who want better solutions and also want to understand the system a little bit better. So we'll go over the basics of e-invoice, the legal provisions, creating an account with the NIC portal, and then we'll talk about some of GSTZen solutions, and we will also have a live demo of our solutions. Before we go into e-invoicing, a brief introduction about GSTZen. GSTZen provides GST compliance software consisting of the following. We have return filing for GSTR 1, 3B, 9 and 9C. We have lots of reconciliation and reports such as books versus 2A, books versus 2B. We have 1 versus 2A versus 3B report. We have a PAN level report, e-waiver report, so on and so forth. So again, I urge you people who are not using GSTZen to just take a look. It will make your GST compliance faster and simpler. We also have lots of other utilities like to convert from JSON to Excel. We have validators, and these are all very popular. In numbers, we have about 30,000 users. We have about 20 crores invoices in our database, and we process about 1 million invoices every day. We have users downloading lakhs of reports in a year. When it comes to e-invoicing, our users generate about 1 invoice every 2 seconds in our platform. So as I speak, every 2 seconds, some invoice is getting generated. And we thank our users for that. They're trusting GSTZen. Now let's look at the progress of e-invoicing. E-invoicing first started for taxpayers with turnovers 500 crores and above on 1st of October 2020. Since then, the limit has been lowered, and the 20 crore and above taxpayers have gone live on the 1st of April. Let's go over the legal provisions. So these are the various notifications issued by the central government that specify the deadline on when taxpayers have required to generate invoices. As you can see, progressively the turnover limit has been reduced, and right now the most recent notification is Central Tax Notification 1/2022. As a result of this notification, taxpayers with turnover 20 crores and above are required to generate e-invoices from the 1st of April. Let us also see the other relevant notifications. The most important notification that gives power to the e-invoicing, that gives rise to the e-invoicing system, is CGST notification 68/2019. So this notification specifies, makes a change to Rule 48. It adds 3 sub-rules, 4, 5 and 6. What does sub-rule 48, sub-rule 4 say? It specifies that invoice has to be prepared in the format prescribed by the government, and the invoice has to be registered with the government's portal, and you need a invoice reference number against that invoice. Only if you have all of this, this is a valid, this is the procedure to generate an e-invoice. That's what sub-rule 4 says. And very importantly, sub-rule 5 says invoice other than the above is not a valid invoice. So until now, people were sending PDF copies of invoices or printing invoices in paper, signing them. These documents are all not invoices. only an electronic invoice that has an equivalent acknowledgement against it, that is a valid invoice. Further, 48 sub-rule 6 gives a simplification. It says that multiple copies of invoices are not required. In earlier, you have to have an original for the recipient, duplicate for transporter, triplicate for the supplier. These concepts are not required. So if you have generated a digitally signed invoice with the government portal, gotten the acknowledgement, that is sufficient. That is enough. You don't need to print them. CGST notification 69/2019. This notifies the common portal. What it says is that there are going to be 10 portals. Right now, one of those portals is active, www.einvoice1.gst.gov.in. So right now, this portal is active and all invoices have to be registered in this portal. Notification 60/2020, it specifies the schema or the fields of the INV01 or fields of the E-invoice. It says that an invoice needs to have an invoice number, invoice date, needs to have supplier details, recipient details, item details, so on and so forth. So all that you would print in your regular invoice are now captured digitally in the E-invoice, and this notification specifies the E-invoice format. So to whom is e-invoicing applicable? It is applicable to all taxpayers with annual aggregate turnover more than 20 crores, except the following taxpayers who are exempt. If your registration is in a special economic zone unit, if you have an SCZ GST registration, you are not required to generate e-invoices. Also, persons covered by CGST rule 54, the following sub-rules mentioned on the screen, these taxpayers are not required to generate e-invoices. Primarily financial institutions or transport companies and who are in the business of a passenger transportation service, and also admission to the exhibition of cinematographic films in multiplex screens. So these only for these types of transactions and only for people in these businesses, e-invoicing provisions are not applicable. Otherwise, for everybody else, e-invoicing is applicable. So this is a very important slide. I urge you to pay attention. Now, which transactions are covered in the e-invoicing rules? The screen has two parts. On the left-hand side, you have documents. On the right-hand side, you have the type of transaction. Whichever box is mentioned in green, that means it is applicable to e-invoicing. Whichever one is mentioned in red, those are not applicable for e-invoicing. Now, let's look at the documents. When we actually say e-invoice, it is not actually an e-invoice. It should be considered as an e-document. Invoices, credit notes, and debit notes all come under the e-invoicing provisions. However, for convenience, we just call it e-invoice. There are some other documents like bill of supply. If you are supplying exempt goods, you will not, for which there is no taxes, then you will not issue a tax invoice, you will issue a bill of supply. If you're issuing a bill of supply, there is no provision to register it as an e-invoice. It doesn't apply. If you are making a delivery challan, again for delivery challan, e-invoicing does not apply. If you are an input service distributor, if you are distributing credits to other taxpayers within the same PAN, e-invoice provisions do not apply. So e-invoice provisions apply only to tax invoices, credit notes, and debit notes. Now, what are the types of transactions? Within invoice, do I have to generate e-invoice for all invoices? The answer is no, only for those shown here in green. If you have a business-to-business B2B transaction, then you need to generate e-invoices. If you have a B2G transaction, if you are making service or goods to the government, then you need to generate e-invoices. If you are exporting goods or services to recipients outside India, then you need to generate e-invoices. Now, there are some transactions for which e-invoicing provision does not apply. If you have a B2C, business to consumer transaction, then this transaction, whether it is a tax invoice, credit note, debit note, these transactions are not covered under e-invoicing. Also, purchases from URD, there is a practice where businesses record their purchase from an unregistered supplier. Usually this could come under reverse charge. They enter it in their books of accounts. For these types of transactions, there is no registration in the portal that is necessary. If you are importing goods or services, no such registration is necessary. So finally, B2B, B2G and export transactions for invoice, credit notes and debit notes. Only these transactions are applicable for e-invoicing. Now let's look at registration. So this is an important screen. There are multiple portals. We have seen lots of taxpayers get confused. In fact, we had one customer who was generating e-invoices in the trial portal for more than 6 months. And only then later they noticed this. So the government has set up multiple portals. The most important portal is the one given at the bottom, einvoice1.gst.gov.in. You need to register in this portal, and whenever you're checking, make sure that you're checking in this portal and not somewhere else. There is also a trial portal, einvoice1-trial.nic.in. In this portal, you can go and generate trial invoices and test them. For developers, software developers, government has also provided an API service, and the test API for that is einv-api sandbox.nic.in. So you can go to this portal and you can generate test invoices and check it out. Here are some other related portals. You can find the list of GST numbers generating IRN. There is this portal here. You can also check whether a particular taxpayer is eligible for e-invoicing. The government has provided bulk generation utilities. You can use them. In fact, we are conducting a poll. We have seen that most of the people who have not yet used other utilities are using the government's utility. Government has also provided QR code verification utility. If an e-invoice comes with a QR code, you can scan that and verify that it's a valid e-invoice. There's also utility. If you have received an e-invoice as a soft copy, you can verify the signed e-invoice on the government portal. These are the utilities the government has provided. Now let's look at the diagram to show you the process and the workflow of e-invoicing. The simplest way I'll explain e-invoice, it is very similar to the e-waybill system. You upload data to the e-waybill portal. E-waybill portal assigns an e-waybill number that is proof that you have generated the e-waybill. So e-invoice is also very similar. Your seller uploads the e-invoice to the portal. You can upload directly to the portal, or you can use tools like GSTZen. We have Excel utilities. We also have APIs. Using any of these tools, you prepare the invoices, you send it to the government's portal. What does the government portal do? Right now, there is only one e-invoice registrar, which is run by NIC. There could be multiple registrars. The government will first do a deduplication check whether that invoice is already generated. If not, it will accept the invoice, validate it, give you back an acknowledgement number. Along with acknowledgement, they give you a digitally signed invoice and a digitally signed QR code. So this is the proof that you have generated the e-invoice. Furthermore, the e-invoice registrar also sends the invoice to the government's GST portal, the common portal, or gst.gov.in. It will go to this portal, and in this portal, it will get populated into your GSTR1 automatically. It takes about 2 to 3 days for this process to happen. So within that time, it will automatically be there in the GSTR1. Further, automatically it goes to the taxpayers, the recipients GSTR2A. And later, if you file your returns, it will also go to the recipients GSTR2B. So this is the end-to-end workflow of e-invoices from the supplier all the way to the GST portal. Once again, let me skip this slide. We'll go over a few common terms and definitions for e-invoicing. A common term that you will hear is invoice reference number, or IRN. My suggestion, advice to everybody is to simply ignore the IRN. This is not at all needed for human beings. This is if you are using some computer system, the computer system will take care of it, save it. Otherwise, there is no need for anybody to understand what this number is, what to be done, because this is a very long number. It's about 64 characters, or this is exactly 64 hexadecimal characters long. It's for here, there is one on the screen. There it starts with 453C0 and ends with EE4. Nobody is going to be able to read this number. Maybe you can copy paste this, but there is no use for this number for human beings. It's only there for the systems to verify that the same invoice has not been generated. The key point is that this invoice is unique. This number is unique. Once assigned to some particular invoice, it can never be used by anybody in the system. All right. The next concept to note is Invoice Registration Portal, or IRP. Right now, there is only one IRP portal, which is run by the NIC, National Informatics Center. So from the taxpayer, the data in JSON format goes to the IRP. IRP checks for duplication, make sure that it's not a duplicate e-invoice, and sends it to the e-invoice registry. Invoice gets saved, and the IRP also uploads it to the e-waybill portal, so you can immediately generate e-waybills. The IRP also populates, sends it to the common portal, it will get populated there. And finally, the IRP sends the details back, the digitally signed invoice to the taxpayer. So this is the proof that with the digital signature and with the digitally signed QR code, you can make sure that you have generated the e-invoice, and this will be your proof. So the first IRP is run by NIC. More IRPs will come in the future. That is the expectation. The IRP verifies the invoice and acknowledges the e-invoice. What is the time that the IRP takes to reply? You can think it is the blink of an eye. It is about 100 to 200 milliseconds. In that short amount of time, IRP will do everything and get back to you that it's a valid invoice. Okay. The IRP retains the data for about 24 hours. Between 24 to 72 hours, the IRP keeps these details. Beyond that time, if you go to the IRP portal, you will not be able to see the e-invoice. So you should keep proper records and make sure that if you need any proof, you have it in your own computer systems. The IRP will not contain a listing of invoices. If you go and ask where the invoice generated last week, you will not be able to find that in the invoice registration portal. So this is important to keep in mind. Here is a sample response from the IRP portal. So this is in JSON format. Even though it's in JSON format, some of these fields are understandable by anybody. So you can see that there is an acknowledgement date, there is an acknowledgement number, there's IRN. I already mentioned it's a 64 character number. Again, my advice, just ignore it. Let me go now from the bottom. There is an e-waybill date, e-waybill number, the validity period of the e-waybill. If the IRP is able to generate an e-waybill, you have provided vehicle details, the e-waybill will also get generated. And status ACT indicates that it's an active e-invoice. Now there are two fields here in the middle called signed invoice and signed QR code. To ordinary human beings, this is going to be basically garbage. You will not understand anything in this. However, for a computer program, the program can decode these characters and verify that this is a valid invoice that has been accepted by the IRP portal. So the signed invoice is about 4,000 characters, signed QR code is 1,000 characters. So these 1,000 characters can be converted into an image QR code and printed in the invoice. So we'll also look into the QR code. So here is a picture of a e-invoice converted into PDF or on the screen. This is how it looks. It contains the invoice details, IRN number, acknowledgement number, date, the transaction details at the bottom. On the top right, it contains the QR code. So this is whatever data came from the IRP, which is the E, Y, J, H, B, G, C. So these characters are displayed here as an image. So if you scan this, you will only read these characters. These characters again will not make sense for any ordinary human being. However, to the government, to the utility, software utility, you can scan this and make sure that this is a valid e-invoice. So here is a picture again of the digitally signed QR code. Using this, you can know that this is a valid e-invoice. Let me decode and show you what are the contents of this invoice. So this the signed QR code in this picture. Here are the details. So it has a buyer GST number, the document date, document number, the document type, IRN or the invoice reference number, item count, that there is only one item in this invoice, the main HSN code 1001, the seller GST number, the total invoice value, and so on. So these are the details that are encoded in this picture, and this picture contains these characters, these approximately 1000 characters long. So this is what is there as a QR code. So let me talk about, so these were all details about e-invoicing. Let me again show you a picture of e-invoicing through GSTZen to give you a flavor of what our solution will do. And this picture is applicable to any software provider. Basically, what they will do is the ERP or accounting software will take your invoice details. The invoice details will get validated by the e-invoicing module inside the software or outside the software. Like if it's a third-party provider by GSTZen, it will do the validation. From there, the invoice is sent to the government portal, the IRP portal. The IRP portal gets back to you with a IRN, digital signature, and the QR code. And your e-invoice module or your software should save these details in your accounting software so that you have access to this down the line. Such a software can also email the soft copy, the PDF, to the recipients. So this is the overall view of the e-invoicing solution that GSTZen provides. GSTZen has lots of different solutions. From the left, we have Excel based solutions. You can drag and drop an Excel. We also have a secure folder solution. You can automatically upload an Excel to a SFTP or FTP server. GSTZen will read from that and generate e-invoices. We also provide e-invoice APIs for software providers to integrate. And we have our own solutions where we integrate with Tally and SAP. So from the left to the right, on the right-hand side are the easiest, most user-friendly solutions. On the left are solutions which are a little bit difficult to use, but again, they work very well for generating e-invoices. So let me go over a few frequently asked questions. Before I do that, let me pause a bit. I'm sure a lot of you would probably be having some questions, a little bit about e-invoicing. So if you have any questions, please feel free to answer the questions. Feel free to ask your questions. If you can raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask your question. Does anybody have a question? You may also type your question in the chat.
Hi, Surya. This is Harsha here.
Yes, hi, Harsha.
So is it possible for you to show a demo of how GSTZen integrates with one of the ERPs that we are using? The ERP we are using is Focus.
Sure. I plan to show a demo of our API solution.
Okay.
Are you from the company or are you a software developer?
I'm from a company. I'm a chartered accountant. So we need to integrate our ERP with a third-party tool like yours.
Sure. I will show how the APIs work. Essentially, how the APIs work is you send the data and the invoice will get generated. Somebody from your company has to do the integration, or your software developer can do the integration. We also have Excel-based solutions. I'll show our Excel solution with the API solution. I hope that will give you an understanding of what our solutions offers. And further, if you have other questions, we can discuss.
Sure. Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else has a question? Please raise your hand. I can unmute you. And you can also type your question in the chat. Okay, let me go over some of the questions that I have prepared here. At what time is the e-invoice required for a particular transaction? Here are the types of transactions. When is e-invoice required? If this is an invoice for the movement of goods, the invoice should be generated before commencing the movement of goods. If it is an invoice for across the counter sale, the invoice should be generated before the sale happens. If it's an invoice for services, you should generate the e-invoice before issuing the invoice to the customer. Usually for services, after the service is rendered, there is some time period before which you have to issue the tax invoice to the customer. Before issuing the tax invoice, the e-invoice has to be generated. The common questions that people ask is, how do e-way bills work? The e-way bills are covered by the e-way bill rules, Rule 138 of CGST rules. There is no change in the e-way bill rules. However, you are continuing to generate e-way bills, you will use the same method in the future also. However, the e-invoice facility, what is one thing that e-invoice does? When you generate the e-invoice, the details for the e-way bill is already available with the e-way bill portal. You can generate the e-way bills simply by entering the vehicle number. There are also people who generate e-way bills simultaneously along with generating e-invoice. While generating e-invoices, you can generate e-way bills also. So that facility also exists. How to print an e-invoice? You print it along. Yeah, how to print an e-invoice? You print it along with the IRN number and the QR code. Also, there is a notification that says the QR code in the digital display is sufficient for transport. I also see a question that somebody has asked, Mr. Santosh Kumar Sahu. I'd like to ask about digital signature in the tax invoice. How can we create the same? If you are generating a PDF of your invoice, in the PDF, you can sign the PDF digitally. If you are using GSTZen, GSTZen has provisions for doing a digital signature along with generating the e-invoices. After generating e-invoice, the PDF gets generated, the PDF gets signed digitally. Such a facility exists. If you want to do this on your own, you can, however you are signing your PDFs, you can continue to use the same method. How to send the e-invoice to the recipients? The IRP government will not send the invoice for you. You will have to do it on your own. Right now, what our recommendations to email, if you're sending a PDF, along with the PDF, send the acknowledgement JSON that you receive from the government portal. That will give them the proof that this is a valid invoice. So the government is building a system to send the invoice directly to the recipient. We do not know when that will be released and when it will go live. Until then, you will have to do it on your own. So what details of the e-invoice should you save in your ERP? If you are a software developer, you're a business. Our suggestion is save whatever details that the government sends you. Keep everything. The most important fields that you should keep are the acknowledgement number, acknowledgement date, the invoice number, the invoice and the QR code, which are digitally signed. The digitally signed data from the government, I showed you those 4,000 characters, 1,000 characters, save them, keep them with you. At a later date, if somebody asks for proof, you can use them. If it is not mandatory for, okay, let me go over some of those questions that I have prepared. I'll go to the users' questions again. Until what time can you register an e-invoice? Anytime before issuing the invoice. There is no time limit. The common question is, can I generate backdated invoices? Today, the date is 12th of April. Can I generate an invoice dated, let's say, January 1st, 2022? Can I generate that invoice today? The answer is yes. There is no, the government will not block you. However, you have to generate the invoice before issuing to the customer. Our recommendation is before 20, like if the invoice is dated today, within some 24 hours, 48 hours, please generate the e-invoice. Do not delay it later than that. That is our recommendation, but the government has no restriction. Very important questions that people keep asking. Can an e-invoice be cancelled? Yes, an e-invoice can be cancelled within 24 hours of its creation. If you create an invoice today, the time right now is about 3:30. You can cancel it before tomorrow 3:30 p.m. Beyond 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, you cannot cancel the invoice. Can the e-invoice be modified? No, there is no provision to modify the e-invoice. If you created today again at 3:30, even 1 minute later, you cannot modify the invoice. There is no such provision called modification of invoice in the GST rules. Therefore, there is no such provision of modification in the e-invoice rules as well. So once you have generated, your only option is to keep it as it is or cancel the e-invoice if you have made a mistake. Now, it's a common question that people ask is, I have generated the invoice, it's a mistake, and I forgot to cancel. I'm not able to cancel now. It's more than 24 hours. What can I do? Cancel it in the book in your books of accounts. And the GST portal will automatically populate this invoice into your GSTR1. If such a thing happens, do not populate it. Do not report the invoice. Make sure that you delete the invoice from your GSTR1. So these are the two things that you can do if you have missed that 24-hour window. So these are some common errors that you have seen the users face. HSN code is wrong. Please use a proper validator. PIN code does not match state code. The government has given the master list of PIN codes. This issues people face in their early days of e-invoicing, but after some days they get used to it. They have proper master data and don't face these issues. Recipient GST is cancelled. It's a very common occurrence. People are seeing this. It's very difficult to avoid it upfront. So check the status in the GST portal. Otherwise, generate the invoice. When you generate, you'll get this error and then make it a B2C. That is all you can do. Any other issues? Use proper software and then it will be sure that your e-invoice is valid and it will get generated. So let me go into this is probably a good time to show a live demo of e-invoicing through GSTZen to give you a real picture of what it means. Before that, I also see some questions. If you have any questions, please ask to unmute and we can unmute you. Is the e-invoice to accompany the tax invoice to the recipient? So Rani, the answer to that question is yes. Your tax invoice has no meaning, has no value. Whatever you print on paper has no meaning. It has to be registered as a e-invoice. Only then it makes sense. So Santosh Kumar Sahu, you have some specific question. Again, I think we will take it offline. It's not clear what the question is and we will see that. Let me go over to the live demo. I'm going to generate. This is GSTZen's homepage. I'm going to generate an e-invoice right here in GSTZen software. I'm going to the sales register and prepare. I'm going to punch in a new invoice in front of you and I'm going to generate it. Let's see how it works. Here is a sales register. There are lots of invoices here. There is an invoice number, date. The green tick indicates that the e-invoice was successfully generated. There are some here yellow circle saying that the e-invoice is not applicable or not generated. Here it means this e-invoice was cancelled. So there are lots of different statuses of an e-invoice, we are color coding and showing here the appropriate symbol. Now let me generate a new B2B sales invoice. Let me pick a recipient from my list of recipients. So let me go to somebody here. Wait, so this is some Mobase Electronics India Private Limited. Let me choose this party. So this is my invoice number. Let me choose last week's date. I'll choose the date as 5th of April. Other details are all optional, so I'll just save the details. Hold on. So somebody says this invoice number already exists. So let me give a different number. So let me give a unique number, 12 for today's date and 0001. Let me enter the items of this invoice. So tables. Let me say I'm selling a table for about 5,000 rupees. Let us say I am selling a chair. Let me say I'm selling 4 chairs for 1,600 rupees each, right? So here you go. So 5,000 rupees for the table, 6,400 rupees for the set of 4 chairs. They have different tax rates. Here is one with a 12% rate. Here is an 18% rate. The software calculates the rate. And what is the total amount? The total amount is, including taxes, is 13,152. So this is the invoice that we have prepared in our software. You can see here the status saying e-invoice not yet generated. So what does it take to generate the e-invoice? In GSTZen, there is a button. Click here to generate e-invoice. The moment I press this button, the e-invoice will get generated immediately, let's say in about a second. So let me go ahead and press this button. Our software will send this data to the e-invoice portal, generate it, save the details and bring back. So you can see here, this is how long it took. Here is the IRN number issued by the sandbox. I'm testing it on the sandbox portal. Here is the acknowledgement date. You can see today's date, 12th of April 2022, and the time is 3:39 p.m. So you have tested just now. Here is the acknowledgement number. So this is how long it takes to generate a e-invoice through GSTZen. Now say you want to cancel. Here is a simple button. Press this button. The software will ask you for customize. Hold on. Before canceling, there are a few things that I wanted to do. Let me show you a PDF. So here is the PDF of the invoice generated by GSTZen. It contains your details, supplier details. It contains the recipient details. It contains the tables and chairs, the items that we added to the invoice, the total amount. It also contains the IRN number, the acknowledgement date number, acknowledgement date, and the QR code. So this is all that is there in the PDF. You also have an acknowledgement JSON that you can download. I am downloading here. It's saved in our computer. Let me go to the e-invoice portal run by the government. So one of those utilities here is verify signed invoice. So let's go to this facility. Let me browse and upload the acknowledgement that I just now downloaded. So I downloaded the acknowledgement JSON here. It's saved here in my computer. I'm going to the e-invoice portal. I'm going to validate it. Once I click submit, portal will validate it and tell you that this is a valid invoice. So here you can see digitally signed invoice. Here is the government's digital signature details. It was generated by Clouds and Software Labs Private Limited, our company. Here is our GST number. You can see that here is the IRN number, acknowledgement number, date, invoice number, date, supplier, recipient, the same tables and chairs, and the QR code. So whatever details you are seeing in GSTZen's PDF, you will be able to see the same details. For example, here the IRN number is 12D3. You can see it here, 12D3. So this is the proof that this is a valid invoice that was generated in the government's portal. All right. So this is how we generated invoice in our software. GSTZen also provides other methods for generating e-invoices. We have bulk generation facility using Excel. There are multiple solutions. I am going to use GSTZen's full Excel template. I have prepared a file already. Let me open the file and show it to you. Hold on for a minute. Okay, I don't have the file. Give me a minute. Let me get it. Yeah, so here is the file that I just now downloaded. So you can see here. Here are the columns in this file. Some of these columns are mandatory. Some of these columns are optional. So you can see a document type, document date, document number are mandatory columns. You can mention that this is an invoice. Here is a debit note. Here is a credit note. There is a document date and time. Document date, document number. There is a transaction type. Here is a SCZ invoice. Here is a regular B2B invoice. Here is an export invoice, so on and so forth. Some of these fields are optional. So if you leave, like if you do not mention transaction type, then we will consider this as a regular invoice. There's also the place of supply. So many fields. Let me go over some of these fields here. So you can have supplier details. You can have recipient details, ship to details, dispatch from details. Here is the item details. And there is the HSN code, description, quantity, unit rate, amount, and the tax rates and tax amounts. So this is a simple Excel that you can prepare. GSTZen also has a facility where you can map your own Excel. For example, if you have an ERP system, you can take the Excel directly from your ERP, and GSTZen team will help you do a one-time mapping. Once the mapping is done, you can generate an invoice. You can use that Excel all the time to generate invoices. In this demo, I'm showing you GSTZen's default Excel template. So this template is ready. The data is ready. So how to generate invoices? Simply drag and drop or upload your file. So I will upload this file. Once the invoices are uploaded here, in a few seconds, the invoices will come and show up here. So let's just wait a few seconds. You can see that there were 8 invoices. GSTZen did the processing, and so now there are 8 invoices in the file. They have all come to GSTZen. You can see the taxable total is about 1.89 lakhs. The invoice date range is 12th of April. All invoices are dated today. There are no errors in these. And here are the invoices that we uploaded. Here is the legend. Green tick means invoice was generated. E-invoice was generated. Yellow circle means e-invoice yet to be generated. Red dash means e-invoice generation. We faced an error. So right now we have not attempted any e-invoice generation. Invoices is yet to be generated. Before generation, you have the option of viewing the PDF. You can review and make sure that the e-invoice details are all correct. You can check your address, you can check the amounts, you can check the display, you can check everything. Make sure that this is a valid invoice. Once you are sure that this is a valid invoice, what you can do, there is a button called upload e-invoices. When you press this button and click confirm, GSTZen will upload all these invoices to the e-invoice portal, get the acknowledgement and save them back. You will see that happening quickly. You can now see we say generated for IR and for first invoice, second, one by one, we are generating the invoices. And you can see the status message being sent to the browser, and you can see the status here. So right now this one shows a green tick. Let's wait a few seconds and now you can see the green tick for all these documents. Let me open one of these documents here. When I open the PDF is there. This PDF was similar to what we showed earlier. Now it has the IRN number, acknowledgement date, time, and the QR code. So this is the end-to-end process for generating e-invoices. I was about to show cancellation. I did not do that. Let me cancel the e-invoice and show it to you. So here is the e-invoice which was just now generated. You can see the time 3:46 p.m. on 12th of April, that is today. Here is the cancel e-invoice button. I say cancel. Software asks you for confirmation. So if I confirm, in about a second, the e-invoice will get cancelled. That's it. So this is the end-to-end process. You can either type the invoice here or you can upload it in Excel. Excel also we support multiple formats, either GSTZen format or your format mapped. You drag and drop, the e-invoice will get generated. So that is the end-to-end process. I also want to show what is the API based method of generation. So if you have any ERP, if you're whatever it is, GSTZen provides a very user-friendly API. So all you need to do is you have to construct the JSON, the e-invoice JSON. So I'm using this utility called Hopscotch. Using this utility, I can send data to GSTZen and I can generate e-invoices. So here is some invoice whose details I have saved here. Let me enter some details. I'll just say webinar 12-04/002. I think this is the number. Let me give today's date, 12/04/22. So this is an e-invoice. This is the e-invoice JSON. I just have to send these details. I'll press the send button. You can see that this Hopscotch utility will send the data to GSTZen. From GSTZen, it will go to the portal. I'm not sure why it's taking so long. Okay, it took some time, but now you can see that the e-invoice got generated. So here is the IRN number, acknowledgement number, date, time, other details. And you can see the digitally signed QR code and the invoice details. As I mentioned, these are about 1,000 characters, 4,000 characters. They will not make sense to any human being, but there are proper utilities which will decode and interpret these details. So this is the end-to-end process. There is also a URL for the PDF. If you're a software developer, you can get the e-invoice PDF at this URL. You can also get the e-invoice QR code at this URL. For example, let me just show the QR code. So here is the QR code. If you're a software developer, you can access this QR code right away. So this is the end-to-end process of generating an e-invoice through the APIs. So with that, let me pause a bit. Let me take some questions. I hope people are clear on what the solutions are, what we offer. So Mr. Anand Kumar Jha, you're asking a question, whether compulsorily you have to prepare e-invoice and then e-waybill. Before generating e-waybill, you have to generate e-invoice. However, you can generate e-invoice and e-waybill simultaneously. Let me maybe show you an example here. Let me go to our body. So I have to provide e-waybill details, correct? Yeah, so I have shipped to details. Hold on. So this is an export invoice. Let me go to GSTZen website and let me take a sample of a B2B invoice. I'll just show that to you. We have lots of samples here for software developers to just take and build their invoice. Let me take a regular IGST invoice. Okay, I need this. Just a second. Okay, I'll just. Let me also get our demo GST numbers that we provide to software developers for testing. So in GSTZen's documentation, you can find these numbers. So let me take one such number here for Karnataka. And in the supplier details, I will replace it with I'm also going to change the invoice number. So in document details, let me give today's series for today, web 12-040003, and let me put today's date 12/04/2022. Yeah, so this is the details of a B2B invoice. This is in JSON format. If you're a software developer, this will make sense to you. This also contains e-waybill details. So there is a transporter ID, there is a vehicle number, so on and so forth. Now, if I send these details, you can see that here is the IRN generated. There is also pin-to-pin distance of 1,350 kilometers. Here is the IRN number, acknowledgement date, acknowledgement number, e-waybill date number, e-waybill valid. Where is the e-waybill validity? E-waybill is valid until 19th of April midnight. So that's it. So to answer your question, definitely you need to generate e-invoice before generating the e-waybill, but you can do it simultaneously. If you send both details, the portal will first generate the e-invoice, then it will attach the e-waybill to that e-invoice. Yeah, so Rani has this question in civil works, how to give description for each and every work or to bill all works in single line, clarify. How you want to do is up to you. Whatever you are showing an invoice, whatever line items you are showing in your invoice, you should show the same in the e-invoice. In your tax invoice, if you are showing only one line saying works contract milestone for the month, let's say April, and you are giving some attachment sheet with the details for that month, then in the invoice you have only one line. On the other hand, in your tax invoice, if you are showing a breakup of all the lines, then the e-invoice also you show the breakup. So there's no difference between e-invoice and the tax invoice that you're using today. Whatever details are you're doing today, you can translate that to the e-invoice format. Yeah, so we went through the live demo. So let me just show our just a couple of slides. So this slide goes over GSTZen solutions. We have an Excel connector. I just showed you our Excel solution. We have APIs. We also have GSTZen billing software. If you have custom database, you can use that also. And let me show you the pricing. I leave the screen with the pricing. You can get in touch with us if you need any of these solutions. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to raise your hand. We can unmute you. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Is there a question in the chat? Mr. Santosh Kumar Sahu. Yeah. So, okay. I think I know who you are. So there is no unit called kilowatt hour in the list of units. I understand your question. So give me a minute. So let me go to this official portal. This is the portal run by the government, right? There is master data here. Where is master data? Master codes. So if I go to master codes, there are lots of master codes like state code, HSN code, country code. One of these is UQC codes. So these are the UQC codes officially supported. Like there is bags, BAL, BAL, so on and so forth. I do not see any KWH. I do not see any kilowatt hour or kilowatt here. Is there any watt? There is no watt also here. There is no watt or watt hour. The closest which is there is unit. UNT is units. So 1 kilowatt hour, I think people call it unit. So if you're selling in kilowatt hour, you can replace it with unit. So this is the system that is there today. If you would like this to change, my suggestion is to file a grievance with the NIC portal is what I would say, or file a grievance. It is possible that they would add a new code to this database. That's my suggestion. So any other questions? I have both domestic and overseas business. I have to give invoice to my overseas clients in USD. What can be done? So the E-Invoice accepts invoices amounts only in Indian rupees. Any number that you show will be in Indian rupees. You can show the total amount in US dollars, that's fine. However, for compliance purposes, and again, the way the schema is set up, those amounts have to be in INR. So what will you do? Actually, answer is I do not know. So I think you may, if your customer is insisting to show a US dollar invoice, keep both. Keep the E-invoice for INR and give the US dollar denominated invoice to the customer. That's what I can suggest. Okay, so let me keep the screen open, and I guess there are no other questions. If you have questions, please raise your hand. I can unmute you. So let me show our coordinates here on the screen. This is how you can get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us through any of these means. Go to our website. You can send us an email. You can reach us on Twitter or phone and WhatsApp. We have reached the end of this webinar, almost out of time. It's going to be 4 o'clock. So thank you all for your attention. Thank you for patiently listening and asking your questions. Thank you very much. Get in touch with us, and we wish you the best in your E-invoice journey. I still see one question. Yeah, so our first tax invoice raised on 7th and registered in the portal on 9th. I think that is fine. Yeah. Okay, so thank you all for being a part of this webinar. We'll end the meeting shortly. Thank you very much.